The Basement, or Eyes in the Basement by David Myers, 2012. I got the phone call in the early morning of October 8th. I was still asleep and didn't answer on the first couple of rings. I finally rolled over in my bed and answered it on the fifth ring. Hello? I said in a groggy, sleepy voice.
Is this Sam Darren?
Yeah.
Sam, this is Bob Finch. I know you don't know who I am or what I'm calling about, but are you busy right now?
No. No, I'm not busy right now. What's up?
I got your business card from Neil. I was calling you in regards to a possible job I need done. Neil recommended you because you did such an excellent job repainting his house.
Oh yeah, Neil, I remember that job, I said and sat up in my bed.
Well, that clears up what I'm calling about then. I have a job I need done as soon as possible. How is your schedule looking? Do you have a lot of clients now?
No, my schedule is pretty open right now. I'm available as soon as you want me.
Okay. That's just what I wanted to hear. Can I see you at 3 p.m. today?
Yeah, no problem.
Good. That's just what I wanted to hear. I'm going to switch you over to my secretary now. She's going to give you the address. Hope to see you soon. I grabbed a pen and pad off my nightstand and listened as his secretary gave me the address, and I wrote it down. I hung up the phone a minute later and got up and walked to my bathroom. I took a shower and got my clothes out so I could iron and press my shirt and slacks. I thought to myself, thank God, another job, right when I needed it. I couldn't ask for nothing more. I'm sure you're wondering by now what I do for an occupation. I'm a commercial painter. I have been painting for 15 years. It's hard finding work sometimes in this field. Sometimes I have my hands full with clients, and other times I can't find work anywhere. But I love to paint. I've always loved to paint. It's something about rolling that new paint over old, dirty wall that gives me a good feeling inside. I took a lot of pride in my work and work hard at perfection. I make sure that this is not even a tiny speck of paint in the wrong place. Since I am an independent contractor, my prices for a typical job are very reasonable. I usually charge by the size of the job, and the amount of paint I need is included in the price. I remember the job I did for Neil as I ran the iron over my dress shirt. He had me paint the interior and exterior of the new garage he had built about a month ago. I did a really good job, and I worked hard for long hours to get the paint just right. Neil was so pleased when I had finished the job. He had offered me a bonus on top of my regular price. I took it and thanked him. He said he would recommend me to his friends if they had work available. I thanked him for that too, but in the back of my mind, didn't think he would do it so fast. Well, count your blessings, because when it rains, it pours, and I needed the money. I finished with my clothes and put them on. I took one good look in the mirror to make sure everything looked okay. My brown hair was a little messy, so I ran a comb through it quickly to straighten it out. There, I look fine now, ready for business. I arrived at the job at 2:45 p.m. It's always good to show up to a job early. It shows that you're a dedicated person to being prompt and on time. It sets a good impression. I looked around at the surroundings as I got out my car. It was a small warehouse, had a brick exterior and a loading dock against the side of it. It had a couple of small trucks that were loading and unloading at the dock station. I could hear the familiar sound of forklifts and men's voices as they worked, loading and unloading the trucks. I walked toward the front entrance of the building. It had a glass door. I grabbed the handle and opened the door. A small bell on the door jingled as I entered the lobby. It was a small lobby. It had 4 chairs lined up against the wall and a small coffee table with some magazines scattered across it. A desk sat close to another back door. John's secretary, I presume, sat behind the desk typing on the small computer. She stopped and looked up at me. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Yes, I'm Sam Darren, the painter. I have a 3 o'clock appointment with Bob Pinch." I said, trying to sound as professional as I could. I was never a good speaking business type man. I specialized more in my work, and small talk and conversation was never one of my good attributes in life. She smiled and said, "Oh yes, Mr. Darren. Please have a seat. I will let Bob know who you are." "No, you are here, I'm sorry." I sat down in the chair I was closest to and folded my hands together in my lap. I was feeling a little nervous. I hated waiting. Waiting to me just builds anticipation, and that can make you even more nervous. I tried not thinking about anything. What would I say? What if I started stuttering and didn't get the job? What if he didn't like my first impression? I tried to clear my mind and force the thoughts out of it, but I couldn't. They kept bombarding me and making me even more nervous. Probably one of the reasons why I seek perfection at every job I do is I'm a bit obsessive. And with obsession comes a mind that has thoughts that overrun it. Wish I had an off switch for nervous thoughts running wild, but I don't. Instead, I started twitching my foot. That was a habit I picked up when I'm nervous. The secretary didn't notice. She was just busy dialing Bob Pinch extensions. She waited a few seconds on the phone, and then he must have picked up. "Yes, Mr. Pinch, your 3 o'clock appointment is here for you." She paused for a second, listening to his response, then hung up the receiver. "He will be with you shortly," she said. She looked at me. Did she see my nervous legs twitch? Is she noticing it? What is she thinking? I thought. But she didn't seem to notice anything, went back to working on her computer. I was overreacting as usual. Overreacting from being nervous. Just relax, I told myself. The minutes slowly crept by. It had only been about 4 minutes had passed, but it seemed to me like an hour. Finally, I heard footsteps as someone approached the back door behind the secretary desk. I sat up straight in my chair. My palms were beginning to sweat. I wiped them on my pants leg. I knew I would have to handshake. I didn't want my hands to be too clammy. Too clammy meant you was too nervous about getting the job. I wanted to seem confident. The door opened, and a short, white man with glasses walked through it. He barely even glanced at me. He walked over to his secretary and said something under his breath to her. She nodded and looked in my direction and nodded her head. He turned and looked at me. I could tell by his gaze that he was sizing me up and noting a first impression. He made a small casual smile, then began to walk over to me. I stood up out of my seat and put the magazine that I picked up down. I haven't even looked at it when I was sitting. I hope my palms were not sweaty. I reached out his hand to shake mine. I reached out my hand to shake his. as he approached me. I grasped his hand and gave him a firm shake. "Sam Darren?" he asked, and I nodded my head in acknowledgement. He continued, "I'm Bob Thornton." He released my hand from the handshake. "Well, let's go back to my office and talk." He turned around and faced his secretary. "Shirley, hold my calls till I'm done talking with Sam." "No problem, Mr. Thornton." He turned back to me and signaled with his head to follow him. I walked behind him to the door he had come out earlier. He opened the door and I walked into a long hallway. It had a small bulletin board on one side, and it was cluttered with papers and invoices. I also saw the state minimum wage poster posted next to it. The hallway had a old office smell to it. The building must have been at least 15 years old, my estimate. I heard forklifts outside backing up and moving around, probably unloading the daily inventory. We reached a line of small doors near the end of the corridor. Bob opened the door that had his name on a gold plaque on it. It said, "Bob Pinch, Officer Manager." He walked in, and I followed. I went around to the chair behind a wooden desk. I closed the door behind me, and he pointed for me to sit in the chair in front of his desk. I'm sorry, back that up. He went around to his chair behind a wooden desk, not me. I closed the door behind me, and he pointed for me to sit in a chair in front of his desk. He pulled out a small folder and looked over some papers inside. I sat in the chair and looked around the office as he looked through the papers. I saw another small coffee maker sitting on top of a file cabinet. I also saw some of his family pictures, wife and daughter, and some nice picture frames. He stopped looking through his papers and looked up at me. "Sam, don't need to waste your time with small talk. I got a job for you to do. And if you want to know if you're interested, and I want to know if you're interested, I'm sorry. I heard how good you are from Neil, like we talked about. I have a basement in this office building our company bought last week. It's a pretty big job. Lots of nicks and crannies to get to. Are you busy with anything else right now?" "No, I'm free to start whenever," I said. I didn't want to sound too anxious, but I also wanted him to know I'm a hard worker. Neil already pretty much sold him that I was a man for the job, so I don't have to say much. Good. We need to get the job done by this Friday. I trust you have all your equipment. We have the paint already. I'm going out on a limb here, but Neil says you're good and the right man for the job, so I'm going to trust his judgment." "Yes, sir, you won't be disappointed," I said. "Well, that does it then. You're hired. We will discuss the pay when we take a look at the basement first." He stood, backed up, and shook my hand again. I saw a small flicker in his eyes. What was that? It looked like fear. It couldn't be fear. Maybe my imagination. He glanced away quickly, and the flicker was gone as soon as it came. He gestured toward the door, and I followed him as we exited his office. He led me back down the hallway and back toward the lobby. He opened the door to the lobby and walked toward the entrance. Shirley looked up from the computer, his secretary. She was typing something on. He opened the front entrance door and turned back to Shirley. "Shirley, Sam and I are going to take a look at the site. I will be back in about 20 minutes. She nodded her head in acknowledgement and walked outside into the fresh morning air. I saw the forklift I had earlier stop by with the load on it. The rider nodded at Bob, and said, "Good morning, Mr. Pinch." "Good morning, Todd. How are you doing today?" "Not bad. Finished off that whole truck. Started another one now," Todd said and sniffled. He wiped his nose on his sleeve. Good. Well, don't let me hold you up." Todd nodded his head and started moving the forklift in the direction he was headed before he had stopped. Bob turned toward me. "Guess you're wondering what we do here. Well, we're in the computer business, mainly just shipping. We load smaller loads into the trucks and ship them where they need to go. Come with me this way." He pointed at a small gray building across the street from where we were standing. All of a sudden, a chill ran up my spine as I looked at the building. Let me rephrase that. He turned and headed toward a small gray building across the street. All of a sudden, a chill ran up my spine as I looked at the building. Something was wrong. Something was not right here. I had to leave. I have to leave now. I thought of just walking to my car and driving off without saying anything, but I couldn't. I needed the money. Isn't it always that way? You do things you don't want to when you need money, and my bills are not getting any smaller. I'm probably just feeling a little anxious about doing this job, that's all. But as I looked at the gray building across the street, I knew in my heart there was more to it than that. I was in denial. Something was wrong, and I knew it, but I didn't want to think about it. I ignored and pushed that thought away. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. We started to walk toward the gray building. As we approached it, it almost felt like it was alive and breathing, towering high in the sky, reaching out to me to swallow me alive. Bob seemed unaware of this madness and kept talking. "This business we do has started to grow, growing so large that we need more space. The building we are going to now was vacant a few months ago. We decided to buy the property and use it for our larger inventory. This company out of France owned it. They didn't even give us a high price for it. We practically took it off their hands for pennies. What a deal. I don't know why they're so eager to get rid of it. And I thought there has to be some catch involved. There wasn't any catch. It was a hell of a deal, except..." He stopped because we had reached the front entrance. He pulled out a set of keys from his pocket and unlocked the front entry door. The door opened slowly. It was pitch black inside. The air had a weird, sweet smell to it, hard to describe. I hadn't smelled anything like it before. Maybe similar to mustard mixed with honey. Bob reached inside and flicked on a light switch. The building overhead lights came on. Some of them paused in their sequence and flickered, but came on eventually. I was looking at the inside of a huge, dusty warehouse. I could tell by the looks of it, it hadn't been used in years. I'm making some corrections. Hold on. Used in a while. Because I just said couple months. I need to correct this while I'm talking to you. Bob motioned me inside. I couldn't move. For a second, I stood there, frozen in the entryway, looking in. Bob motioned again, this time with a little frustration in his eyes. I was finally able to put one foot over the threshold and enter the building. My footsteps had a hollow echo on the cement floor of the building. I could hear the wind echoing outside. Even with all the lights on, I was still spooked. I didn't know why. Why was I so scared? It's just an empty warehouse with the lights on. It wasn't dark at all. You could see every corner and every area. What's wrong with me? Bob walked around me and shut the entry door behind us. I turned back to him and asked, "You said you got a hell of a deal, except..." "Well, come with me. I'll show you," Bob said and walked in front of me. I followed him to the back of the warehouse. The back had an old wooden door in a corner. "This here is the basement." I don't know why they would have a basement in a warehouse. Still asking myself that question. Maybe just a place to store extra goods is all I can come up with. He pulled out his keys again, found a different key, and inserted it into the lock on the door. The doorknob creaked a little as he turned it. It seemed that maybe the building had shifted in its foundations, because when he pushed the door forward, it was almost hard for him to move it. The bottom of the door scraped against the floor. The scraping sound made an echo in the empty warehouse like nails on a chalkboard. I jumped at the noise. Bob caught the jump at out of the corner of his eyes. "What's the matter? You're not scared?" Bob asked me. "No, it's just that echo. I didn't think it would be that loud." "Oh, come on, man. You got to see this." It was pitch black inside the doorway, just like the warehouse when we had entered it. Bob did the same as he had done before. He reached for the light switch, and the fluorescent lights came slowly on, chasing away the darkness. I saw a small flight of stairs, maybe 20, before we reached the basement floor. Bob shuffled down the stairs, and I followed behind him. The smell I had smelt earlier was strong now, and wait a minute. It sounded like a small hum was coming from down here. Was it coming from the overhead lights? I looked up at them, but they didn't seem to be producing this noise. Where was it coming from? As soon as the sound had started, it stopped. Was I hearing things? I rubbed my ears. Bob glanced at me with a puzzled look. "You sure you're okay?" "Yeah." Bob turned back around and walked forward. I followed behind him a few feet, then he stopped. I saw him look toward the back wall of the basement, and I followed his gaze with my own. My God, I thought. The back wall of the basement had graffiti artwork covering the entire wall. It was graffiti different from what I had ever seen in my entire life. Monstrous faces with horns and eyes everywhere. Multiple colorful faces, some in laughter, some in anguish, but what really stood out was the eyes. The eyes everywhere looked alive. It was almost as if they were staring right at you, hypnotizing you. You could feel the insanity in them. They say the eyes are the light to the soul, and what I saw in those painted eyes was evil. I began to sweat. I tried to tear my vision away, but I couldn't. Panic's cold hand touched my spine, mixed with fear. The eyes were piercing my soul, screaming insane thoughts in my mind. I wanted to kill myself in that moment. Kill myself and end it all. I never thought about suicide in my life till this moment. Can a painting make you go mad? Is there power in the eyes that drives somebody insane? I wanted to run. Run as fast and as far as I could, but I couldn't move. My feet and legs felt like jelly. Please, Please, please let me look away, Bob spoke. Crazy graffiti, ain't it? Looks like some kids broke in here maybe around a couple days back and messed up the place. I snapped out of my trance as soon as I heard Bob's voice. It almost felt like I wasn't even in a trance at all. I asked myself again, what's wrong with you? The graffiti wasn't alive. The eyes were not piercing my soul. It was just normal graffiti on the basement wall. Nothing special. It actually looked pretty silly. Maybe some young kids with a couple spray cans did it. The magic I saw earlier was gone. Bob didn't seem to notice. He didn't even flinch when he showed me the graffiti when we first started looking at it. It was almost as if he was totally unaffected by it. This made me question my own sanity. Am I going crazy? Am I? Bob didn't notice anything. Why did I? Or did I see anything? This was the worst feeling I felt in my life. Not being able to think you can trust your own mind. So I did what felt right. I blacked out the memory. I was in denial that it ever happened. Maybe just something I ate this morning. I'd been feeling strange all morning. So, it's not a big job, but we needed to have the whole basement, including this wall, painted by next week. We got a large shipment coming in, and we want to make sure we can use this space for extra storage. I don't want some of the guys coming down here and getting spooked by these drawings and then not coming to work no more. I don't scare easily, not the superstitious type, but I can see how these drawings might freak somebody out. All these eyes and such. I swallowed and tried to clear my throat to answer him. Yeah. So when do you think you can get started? Bob asked. Oh, I can get started today. If you want, I answered. Good. I love enthusiasm, and I have a good feeling about you when I first met you. I know that you're the right man for the job. How long do you think it will take to repaint it? Oh, not long. Maybe 3 days at the most. Sounds good. Well, I got to go back to the office. Come on. Bob said, and he turned and walked back toward the stairs. We walked up the stairs together. I kept feeling those eyes staring heat onto my back. I told myself not to look back, not to turn around, but I had to. The temptation overwhelmed me. One last look, one last peek. I turned my head around slowly, my imagination playing scenarios through my mind. Those horrible faces and eyes would be alive, staring deep into my soul, piercing my logic mind and turning all my thoughts insane. But nothing was there. Nothing was there. The graffiti was still there, but no magical evil eyes. And the faces was not alive. It looked like some crude, cheap drawings. What was wrong with me? It must have been something I ate. I turned back around and followed Bob through the door. He closed and locked the door behind me. So I'm going to give you this key, Bob said. He reached in his slap pockets and pulled out one bronze-colored key and handed it over to me. Hold on to that. It's my only copy right now. And I'll put it on my own personal set of keys. I slid the key onto my key ring along with my other key. Bob watched me do this for a second, then looked up to my face. Well, any questions? No, I'm good. I got my equipment out in my truck, so I'll get started ASAP. We walked to the outer door of the warehouse and exited outside into the bright sunlight. Both of us had to squint our eyes at first to let our eyes adjust from the dark gloom of the empty warehouse to the bright sunny day outside. Bob pulled out some sunglasses and put them on. Nice sunny day, he said. He turned to face me. Well, I gotta be going. I got a lot of invoices to work on. If you need me or have problems, you know where to find me. He turned to walk in the direction of the office. He stopped short about 5 or 6 steps and turned back toward me. And remember, Keep this job between me and you, like I asked before. Don't want any employees spooked about that old graffiti. Discretion is my middle name. Don't worry about it, I said back to him and nodded. A little bit of ass kissing helps sometimes, especially if you get a bonus for a job. Bob smiled a small smile, then turned back and walked off. I let out a sigh of relief. I was alone now. I could think and analyze my situation more clearly. Now that I thought about the whole thing, it seemed really silly. My mind couldn't process why I was so scared. So I rationalized that I wasn't scared. I told myself not to dwell on a situation I couldn't logically explain. Why worry? It doesn't solve anything. I focused my mind off the situation, tried to focus on my mind on more pleasant things. We walked up. Okay. Sorry, I had a little mess up on my writing here. Just think about the paycheck and think about all my bills paying off. I walked to my work truck, parked in front of the building, and pulled down the rear gate. It creaked and slammed down. It was an older work truck and had some rust, dirt, and dent in the bedding. I started to pull out my painting tools. Most of the tools had been used on previous jobs and had splatters of paint on the handle. The brushes were clean. I made sure of that before I started any new job. I pulled out all the stuff I needed for the job, closed the rear gate to my truck, and picked up my tools. I headed back toward the empty warehouse. I entered the empty lobby area. It was so eerily quiet in here when I was alone. My palms started to sweat again. Don't get nervous. Just get this job done quickly and get paid. I walked back toward the closed door to the basement. I saw something scurry past me out the corner of my eye. I jumped and screamed. Dropped most of my tools. A small, beady rat sat 10 feet away from me. You little sucker. You little bitch, I thought. You just scared the hell out of me. I yelled at it. It opened its mouth and showed its teeth. Was that a grin? Was it laughing at me? Whatever it was, it didn't seem afraid of my voice. I grabbed the tools from the floor as it watched me. When I grabbed all my tools, I lunged toward the rat. It turned and ran away from me. Yeah, you running now, I yelled at it. It continued to scurry away toward a small dark hole next to the loading docks. It stopped short of the run when it was safely in front of the hole and looked back at me, its beady eyes gleaming in the dark, deserted warehouse. It grinned a evil smile one last time as if saying, "You're too slow for me, old man, and soon you will be dead." What? Where did that thought come from? I thought. The rat turned and disappeared into the hole. Did the rat just speak to me in my mind? I asked myself. Couldn't be. That's crazy talk. And you're not crazy. But with all this stuff happening today, I wondered if I was wrong. I turned back into the direction of the basement door. I walked over to the door and removed the key out of my pocket. I moved my hand to insert the key and realized I couldn't. My hands were trembling again. What the fuck is wrong with me, man? Get a hold of yourself. There's nothing down there but an empty basement and some old bad graffiti. I forced my hand to stop shaking and inserted the key into the lock. I opened the door. It creaked on its hinges. Evil, fearful images of those painted faces rushed through my mind. I was terrified to go in there, but I was in denial. What if those painted faces were alive? What if those evil, hideous eyes looked at me again, piercing my soul? What if the horrible, sharp teeth came alive and come off the wall to devour me? Nonsense. Pfft. I flicked on the light switch and shuffled down the stairs. For a minute, I couldn't look up. So I stopped in my tracks and forced myself to look at the back wall of graffiti once more. I let out a sigh of relief. The eyes were not alive. The faces looked old and silly. I laughed at myself. My laugh echoed off the walls and sounded eerie, almost insane. I didn't care. I was just glad that this painting was nothing more than some crude graffiti on a basement wall. I opened up my toolbox and began to assemble my rollers and brushes. I removed the masking tape I used to cover any splatters on the edges and corner and laid it outside. I also began to spread out a plastic tarp I used so no paint spatters would hit the floor. Okay, all my tools are here and ready to start. My cell phone rang in my pocket. Its shrill ring scared me and made me jump. Gotta stop getting spooked, I told myself. But my nerves were bad from earlier. I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket on the third ring. It was my girlfriend, Emily, calling, and I clicked and answered the button and put the phone to my ear. Hey, babe, I said. Hey, babe, I was just thinking about you, she said. I heard some paper shuffling in the background. She was still at work. Are you okay? She asked. Yeah, why? I asked back. I don't know, I just had this strange feeling that something was wrong with you. I'm glad you're okay. Yeah, I just landed this new job today. Oh? That's great. We can go out tonight and celebrate, she said. Her voice had some excitement in it. I had been with Emily for a couple years now. We had an up and down kind of relationship. She was constantly pestering me to get a regular paycheck instead of doing contract jobs here and there. I promised her I would settle for a stable job one day. I squashed her hopes that this would be that day. Not a big job. Should be finished in a couple of days, I said. She was quiet for a minute and I waited for a response. When are you going to get a real job? Emily, we already discussed this. I will soon. Have you been looking? Not yet, but this job should be a big payoff. She let out a sigh. I could hear disappointment in it. I mean, aren't you happy I found some work again? My bills were adding up, and you know I hate to ask to borrow money. I'm glad that this job came through for me at the right time. It's kind of strange job, but the money will be good. Strange? She asked. Her curiosity overcome her disappointment. Curiosity can be the woman's weakest nature in some circles. Well, the job is just repainting the basement in an empty warehouse. How is that strange? She asked. Well, the back wall of the basement has all this weird graffiti on it. Lots of evil looking faces with sharp teeth and the eyes. What about the eyes? Nothing. They just, they look scary, that's all. Oh, come on, Sam, really? Don't tell me you're scared of some painted eyeballs. I'm not scared. I'm just saying they look scary, I said, trying to hide the fear in my voice and swallow the lump in my throat. Truth is, those eyes did scare me. Scared the shit out of me. But I was in denial. Now also, I'm not going to let her know I was scared. I had to be macho. Well, who you think did it? Wait, I know, probably some teenagers. They must have broke in and was high on acid and painted the wall. No big deal. Now, do you think some amateur doped up teenagers did this? Looks more professional. How you know? You never once went with me to the art gallery, she said. You said art was boring, remember? Whatever, I replied. This is different. Well, before you paint over it, why don't you take a picture of it and send it to my cell phone? I want to see it. I don't think that's a good idea. I was told not to tell anybody about it, and I'm already telling you. Oh, please. I do that thing you like tonight when you get off of work, she said in a seductive whisper. Get out of here, man. That's not going to work this time, I said. But I could feel my dick getting hard in my pants. I couldn't believe it. Why was I thinking about sex after this crazy day? I guess a man's urge for sex never falters, no matter what the circumstances, I thought. I knew she was going to win. I knew I would give in, but I wanted to hear her promise and beg a little more. Even though a woman's promise for sex can change in a minute, especially if the mood has changed or you have said the wrong thing, but still, I like to hear it from her lips. Come on. I promise I will do it, and I'll let you tie me up, please. My dick shot rock hard at that statement. I like the thrill of a woman being totally submitted in the bedroom. It was freaky. Okay, fine. I'm gonna send a pic, but promise me you'll keep it to yourself. Yay! Okay, I promise, she said. But the words didn't sound sincere. I didn't care. All I was thinking about was her naked, sexy body tied to my bed. Okay, well, I love you, and I will see you tonight. I love you too, Sam, she said and hung up. I took my cell phone and scrolled through the menu to the camera application. I clicked on the icon on the screen on the phone, lit up the display. I aimed the camera phone at the graffiti wall. All of a sudden, my hand that was holding the phone started trembling. I couldn't keep it still. Fear crawled up the back of my spine again. The drawings were alive. The eyes looked at me. The faces laughed hideously at me. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, but my hands were still shaking. It was as if the graffiti was breathing in and out, taking away parts of my soul, then blowing the parts back to me mangled and dirty. Then as soon as the feeling came, it passed, just like before. Don't take the picture. Don't take the picture. Just repaint the walls and don't take the picture. But I went against that voice in my head. Partly because I didn't want to believe that there was nothing there. Partly because I wanted someone else to see and say that it was nothing. Nothing but a dirty wall with cheap graffiti in the basement. I wanted to hear them say to me, it's nothing. Then I could sit back a few days from now with my money and laugh. I could forget about this whole experience within a week, maybe a month. I held my cell phone steady now. My hand did not shake. Even though the overhead light was dim in the basement, I was fortunate. My cell phone camera had a flash. I pushed my finger on the take button and took the picture. At first, nothing happened. I thought maybe my finger didn't push hard enough. I tried a second time. Hold up, I just lost my place. This time my cell phone produced a flash, a familiar click noise that the picture had been taken. I looked at the image on my phone and I didn't understand. The image was completely dark. I know the flash should work, so why no image? I thought. Then I blinked, and just like that, the image appeared. Strange. Oh well, I'm not gonna think or worry myself about it, I thought. I loaded up my contacts and scrolled to my girlfriend Emily's name. I created a text message and added the picture to the message. Well, here goes nothing, I thought. I pushed the send button and the cell phone started to send the pic. Stop it. You gotta stop it before it reaches 100%. You still got a chance. Stop it. Then erase it from your phone memory. But I didn't stop it. I put the phone down and started getting my tools ready for the job. The paint cans that Bob had left for me were easy to open. It was a light grayish color paint, not a loud color, standard wall paint. I poured the paint into the roller tray, taped off the corners and edges of the wall, and dipped the roller into the paint. I put the paint dip roller against the surface of the graffiti wall. I almost expected something strange to happen. My muscles had tensed up, as if expecting an electrical shock or something. Nothing happened. A feeling of relief filled me. I started to roll the paint on the wall, erasing the eyes and the hideous faces forever. Or so I thought. End of chapter 1. Come back to me for chapter 2. Tell me what you think so far. It's 11 pages out of 35. So we got about 3-4 more chapters of this short story. Alright, signing off.